Chapter 3. Anya resisted the urge to shout a string of expletives and storm away down the hillside. She hadn't even wanted to go on this colony expedition, let alone find herself in a leadership role. Her only hope for salvation in the challenging situation was the prospect of being able to hand over control to the military escort once they'd landed, but now it seemed like they might be even worse off than the colonists. "That's a lot of smoke," she said after taking a moment to gather herself. "Do you think the ship is intact?" "I don't know." Evan seemed like he was holding something back. He'd been frustratingly evasive, and it was making Anya slow to trust him. She considered herself much better at reading plants than people, but Evan's expressive green eyes told a deeper story than his few words. "What aren't you telling me?" He sighed. "I wasn't sure before, so I didn't want to say anything. But I thought I saw damage to the ship as my pod was ejecting while we were in orbit." "Damage to the guard ship?" Anya's brows furrowed. "But how?" "All part of the mystery about what caused us to evacuate, I imagine." She crossed her arms. The evacuation order had come out of nowhere. The plan had been to remain in orbit for a month, while landing parties went down to Ethos' surface to survey settlement sites. They'd explored everything with probes and automated ground survey units before ever sending the colony ship, but it was important to confirm all findings before sending settlers down to the surface. However, they had only been 2 days into that verification process when the emergency evacuation order had been given. Within 15 minutes, they'd been in pods heading down. None of those pods were part of the actual colonization kit. Prefab habitation structures, food stores, agricultural supplies, all those modules had been lost when the main ship was destroyed, as far as Anya knew. If the military escort cruiser had crashed as well, they were either facing a terrible freak accident, or it was all very intentional. "I'm starting to get the impression that someone didn't want us to settle this world," Anya murmured. Evan nodded slowly. "I didn't want to be the one to say it." "But why? It's a massive expense to send out a colony expedition. If we weren't wanted here, then why not stop the mission before we left? It doesn't make sense. So maybe an unforeseen environmental factor took out both the ships. Uncharted solar activity or something?" "Maybe," Anya shrugged. "The reason doesn't matter right now. We need to focus on our survival. I'd love to get a look at that escort ship's crash site. We'd have a lot better chance of salvaging something useful from the ship than anything we'll find in the pods." "Do you think there were any survivors?" "I can't begin to guess without knowing why we all crashed in the first place. We won't find out by sitting here." "You're not suggesting hiking all the way over there, are you?" Anya asked incredulously. She appreciated when someone was willing to take action, but knowing what she did about the planet, wandering into the wilderness without proper gear very well, may be a death sentence. "I'm not one to just give up and sit around waiting to die." "That's a long trek for a potential dead end, in more ways than one. Our only hope is sending out a distress message about our situation. Our pods don't have anything close to an interstellar comm array, but that escort ship does. Even if it's damaged, there's hope where we have none now." "Yes, but nothing. We can't make it on this world without support. You've said as much yourself. Part of that was the shock talking. People have lived off the land for years. On other planets where they have ancestral knowledge, can you cite one colony where people were dropped off with next to zero gear on an alien planet and lived to talk about it? No, but that's because that never happens." "Not never, apparently." She let out a long breath. "I can't argue that our best chance to make it on this world would be to get access to a comm relay. The notable problem being that there are the whatever horrible monstrosities in the lowlands between our current location and the crash site, which has been my objection from the start. We're not equipped to take those on." Evan stood in contemplative silence for a minute. "Let's head back to camp and mull it over. There has to be a way." "Sounds good. Let's try to find a route through that forest." Having a specific problem to solve gave Anya much-needed grounding. She had no clue how they might be able to safely get to the crash site many kilometers away over rough terrain with unknown creatures lurking in the trees, but solving that challenge gave her a tangible goal to work toward. Under normal circumstances, she thrived on that kind of problem-solving. Selecting settlement sites for new colonies was nothing but finding creative solutions. This project, though, had gotten way too personal. Did I miss something in the original survey? Is it my fault we're in this mess? She knew better than to believe one person could bear singular responsibility for a project of that massive scale. But guilt began to gnaw at the back of her mind all the same. Ultimately, she'd given her approval for settling this planet, despite knowing its risks. Now, those dangers she'd told everyone wouldn't be an issue might lead to her own end. No, she muttered to herself in an attempt to expel the dark storm of thoughts. Sorry, what? Evan asked. Nothing, just reminding myself that this isn't over. Not going to lie, I know we're in a tough spot. I don't intend to go down without a fight, though. Me either. He glanced over his shoulder in the direction of the smoke, already hidden from view again as they descended the hill. How much should we share about what we discovered here? I don't know. I never intended to be a leader, deciding what information to share or what everyone should do. Well, if we tell the whole group everything, half the people are bound to want to go with us, and the rest will either give up because they think the situation is hopeless, or they'll get violent as they compete for supplies. Those are all bad outcomes. A better approach would be for a small group to go investigate the site while everyone else joins together to establish a base camp. Agreed, but scared people don't think rationally. Are we even thinking clearly? Better than most of the people here, I'd wager. We've had a whole lot more survival training than most. True. She drew a long breath and let it out slowly. Thank you for being a voice of reason. It's out of pure selfishness. But you're welcome. She eyed him. I don't think you're nearly as selfish as you'd like me to think. Evan wouldn't admit it, but Anya was shaping up to be more perceptive than he'd like. He had, genuinely, intended for his new life in the colony settlement to be focused on him and his own needs, setting aside the pressure and expectations around serving others for the first time in his life. For as long as he could remember, he'd put other people first, even when it was to his own detriment. For years, he'd been okay with that. But after his last assignment, he'd been unwilling to continue with that lifestyle. Now, he was faced with other people needing help on a scale he'd never imagined. While he wouldn't consider himself to be a survival expert, there was no denying he had more skills than most. There weren't likely to be other people with military training among the surviving colonists, given the selection process for candidates, so he was singularly equipped to offer the kind of insights afforded by his experience. I don't want to be in charge, Anya, Evan said after a time. She raised an eyebrow. Who said anything about that? I'm just jumping to the punchline. A little full of yourself, aren't you? She crossed her arms. You don't know my background. Probably because you refuse to say much of anything about yourself. I have my reasons. He let out a long breath. I hope you can grow to trust me. That will come over time if your actions match your statements. Fair enough. I'll start by solving the mystery about what happened to us. Wow, okay. She let out a little laugh. I was expecting something little, like showing up on time, but you're going straight for the big one. Bold move. Any other goal is meaningless. We need to understand what happened so we know what we're up against. Is there an environmental threat? Was it sabotage? Just a freak accident? She nodded. You're right. Even if we find a way to call for help, some of those scenarios might complicate getting assistance. Colony ships can be fragile, but military ships are designed for toughness. The likelihood of an accident is slim, yeah. Anya sighed. Like it or not, we're in this together. I fully intend to give you the benefit of the doubt. I don't see anyone else who stepped up, which is going to be a problem. In what way? When we head out on our scouting mission to that crash site, who's going to run things here at camp? Peter seemed to have no problem delegating. I hope he's up to the challenge. They continued to the west, toward the slope, where the forest transitioned to the plateau. The grassland made for fairly easy walking, though there were plenty of small rocks posing a tripping hazard. Seeing the location up close, Anya was pleased to verify that it perfectly matched her assessment from her previous survey. Had they not crash-landed on the planet instead of following the staged landing? "Holy shit, Evan! We don't have nothing!" she exclaimed. "Wait, what?" We hadn't sent down any people from the colony ship, but right after we arrived, there was an automated supply drop of some basic survey equipment. At least, there should have been. He didn't allow himself to get too excited. "And you're just remembering this now?" She flourished her arms. "Sorry, there have been a few other things on my mind." "Okay, fair." He looked around. Where would the drop have been made, assuming it happened? Anya placed her hands on her hips. From their current position, there weren't a lot of landmarks to pinpoint their location. "Best guess, about 2 kilometers that way-ish." She pointed further into the plateau. "I didn't see anything from the hilltop." We also weren't looking very hard in this direction. The supply drops aren't bright white like the pods. It would blend in with the landscape. Meant to be found with a tracking beacon, not by sight. You've got it, which will make our job more difficult, but if it's there... First step toward salvation. He nodded. "We have to look." "Good. I was hoping I wouldn't have to convince you." That resource possibility is well worth the extra hike. I don't suppose it's too much to hope that the drop would contain a long-range comm unit. Not likely. Well, I'll take whatever we can get. We still have enough daylight for a detour. Let's scout it out.